Does that make sense? I feel like it sounded a little bit confusing. Hello bookish people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. In today's video we are doing another complete plot breakdown filled with spoilers of a favorite series, and that one is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. In this video we are going to be doing a chapter by chapter spoiler filled breakdown of everything that happens in this book. Okay, so I did this for the Inheritance Games trilogy and a lot of people seem to like it, and you know what, I love the Inheritance Games trilogy, and I have been trying to find something that makes me feel just as good as that series, and I finally found it. I finally boarded the hype train. I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and let me tell you, I'm obsessed with it. So now I must explain the entire plot. I even brought out my old whiteboard to do it because there's a lot of dots, right? We got to connect the murder board. There's a timeline. There's so much going on in this book. I cannot wait to get into it. So let's get through the chapter by chapter breakdown. I know the series is complete, so it's like, why do you need to watch this? I don't know, for your entertainment, if you just don't feel like rereading the book, but you love the book and you want to kind of do a little condensed version of it, here you go. If you're a latecomer like me and you're just starting the second book in the series and you're like, wait, I forgot what happened in the first one, then here you go. I got your back, don't you worry. So in chapter 1, you meet our main character, Pip, and she lives in the small town of Fairview. And for her senior capstone project, she is investigating the murder-suicide of Andy Bell and Sal Singh. So let's put her on the board. So back in Fairview 5 years ago, the popular pretty girl of the school, Andy Bell, was allegedly murdered by her boyfriend Sal Singh, who allegedly committed suicide a couple days later. So in chapter 1, Pip goes to Sal's family's house and knocks on their door, and his brother Ravi answers, and Pip lets him know she is doing this project for her senior capstone project and she would like to interview him and that she is going to prove Sal's innocence. So we also start to learn the backstory of the crime. Andy went missing between the times of 10:40 p.m., that is when she was last seen, and people first started to notice that she was missing at 12:45 a.m., so that is the time window when the crime occurred. We also learned the night of the murder, Sal was at his friend Max's house with his other friends, Jake, Millie, and Naomi. So we added them to the board. Jake and Millie are smaller because they're kind of irrelevant in this story. I don't know about the future books, but I've only read book 1, but in book 1 they're kind of irrelevant, so they're smaller. But we learned that Sal told police that he left Max's house at 12:15 a.m., which would give him an alibi for the time frame that Andy went missing. But all 4 of his friends went to the police Tuesday and told the police on Tuesday that Sal lied about his alibi and that he actually left Max's house at 10:30 p.m. And then that same Tuesday, they came clean to the cops and told them Sal had been lying. Sal swallowed a handful of sleeping pills, put a bag around his head, went in the forest, and unalived himself. But before he unalived himself, there was a text sent from Sal's phone to his father's phone, basically saying, "I didn't, I'm sorry," and this is what came to be known as the confession text. And when police found Sal's body in the forest, they decided to close the case, saying that Sal was the one who abducted and murdered Andy, even though they still couldn't find her body, and now the case was closed. The evidence police cited for Sal being the murderer was one, that when they found his body, they found Andy's cell phone on Sal's body, so why would he be in possession of her cell phone? They also said they found her blood under his fingernails, they found her blood in the trunk of her car, and also Sal's fingerprints were all over the interior of Andy's car, but it should be noted her whole family's fingerprints were in the interior of his car as well, and I don't even know in a fictional world how that could even be evidence considering he was her boyfriend. Of course his fingerprints are going to be on her steering wheel, on her dashboard, and all over the car, but you know what? We'll save that for another day. We also learned that before the murder that Andy received a death note in their locker, and although it wasn't signed and it was anonymous, police believe that Sal is the one who put the death note in Andy's locker. And then we get to our first interview, and this is when Pip interviews Ravi, Sal's brother. Actually, that's a lie. She interviews one other guy before, and that is Stanley Forbes. He is just a journalist, and basically Stanley was very pro-Sal, not pro-Sal, anti-Sal. He was the one who was basically pro-police in this situation, saying that Sal undoubtedly committed the murder And there's no question about it. All evidence points to him. So Pip first wanted to interview Stanley to see his thoughts on the case, but then her second interview, the juicy interview, is with his brother Ravi. And this is when we start to learn some information. So the weekend that Andy was missing, Sal was relentlessly calling her phone over and over again. And first of all, why would he be calling her phone if he killed her and he had the phone in his possession? Why would he be calling her phone looking for her and be so distraught and be so upset because he thought she was missing? Ravi also tells us what kind of person Andy truly was, and saying that she was very manipulative, and that basically if she was the type of person who was going to disappear, then she did it on purpose to punish someone. Ravi also says that he always thought Naomi had a crush on Sal, even though Sal never reciprocated that crush. At the end of their interview, Pip tells Ravi why she's so interested in the case and why she's so gung-ho on proving Sal's innocence, and that's because Pip was best friends with a girl, or is best friends with a girl named Kara, who it happens to be Naomi's sister. And because Pip is best friends with Kara, she always was at Kara's house, hence being at Naomi's house. And because Sal and Naomi were his best friends, Sal was also always at Naomi's house. Therefore, Pip was always kind of around Sal. So Pip does have some sort of connection to him and remembers him just like telling jokes and laughing with him and just getting to know him as a person, kind of all four of them hanging out together. So I guess we could connect Pip to Sal in that way. And what's really cool about this book is you kind of get to read Pip's like journals for her project, and in one of her journal entries she talks about who she thinks could be potential persons of interest, who could be potential suspects, and she arrives on Jason Bell, who's Andy's dad. And basically the reason why she's suspicious of Jason is because in an interview with the press, Jason said that Andy was such a presence in the house and they miss her. And he used the past tense was such a presence. And this is before Andy was declared legally dead. This is before they thought that she was murdered. So Pip finds it suspicious that he used past tense to describe his daughter while she was still missing and while they still were looking for her and while they still thought she was alive. Although I feel like Pip is kind of reaching on this one because she's not currently in the house. So I could see how like someone would be like, oh, like they were in the house, like, oh, like she was such a huge presence in our house, we miss her, we want her back, like because she's not currently in the house. You know what I mean? So like I kind of feel like she's reaching a bit on that one, but like we'll let it go. And she names Jason her first person of interest. So we're gonna put a star right over Jason. Next, Pip interviews Naomi, and during the interview, Naomi's body language and the way she's talking, she's very emotional and she's very nervous, which Pip kind of interprets as a little bit suspicious, but also like, okay, you're going through a hard time, like your ex-best friend is now a murderer, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, you can be emotional and nervous, but like it's a bordering on suspicious. Naomi tells her that the night when they were all hanging out when Andy disappeared, that Sal had told them that him and Andy were on a break, that he was taking a break from her, and that he left the house at 10:30 p.m. She also tells Pip that herself and Millie never left the house all night, and that the next morning, Saturday morning, is when they all went over to Sal's house, and that's when he asked them to lie to the police about his alibi and have them tell the police that he actually left the house at 12:15 a.m., even though they say he left at 10:30 p.m. So originally they complied and they told police that he actually left the house at 12:15 a.m., but then Tuesday morning after Andy's disappearance, they decided to come clean to the cops and tell them that no, Sal actually left at 10:30 p.m. Next, Pip interviews Max, and she finds a few discrepancies between his and Naomi's story, starting with the fact that when she asked Max about Sal and Andy's relationship, he said that they seemed totally fine to him. And also he said that night that Sal just kind of snuck out of the house and didn't really tell anybody that he was leaving. Whereas when she interviewed Naomi, Naomi said Sal had announced to them that he was leaving. So there's a big discrepancy there. Max saying, oh, he left without anybody noticing, and Naomi saying that he announced that he was leaving. Also tells Pip that after Sal left, that Max and Millie, himself and Millie, were playing video games downstairs, and Naomi went upstairs and she was kind of unaccounted for the rest of the night. So Pip decides to name Naomi her second person of interest. And the reason she is a person of interest is because she learned that she had a crush on Sal that was not reciprocated, and then after Sal left, she was unaccounted for by herself in the house. So Pip's thinking like, okay, they think she's upstairs, but what if she snuck out and did something and then came back? Next, Pip decides to interview Elliot, and Elliot is Naomi and Kara's father. So when Pip interviews Elliot, he tells him that him and Sal were really close and he was helping Sal get accepted into Yale, and he had been Sal's teacher for a while. And then when she asked about Elliot's relationship with Andy, he said that he taught her 1 year for school, but the 2 years leading up to her disappearance, he didn't have her in any classes, so he didn't really like interact with her. Like, he saw her around like in the hallway and stuff, but he didn't really have any sort of relationship with her. So after her couple interviews, Ravi comes over to Pip's house and he's like, hey, let me team up with you and let me help you. If you're gonna prove my brother's innocence, I want to be a part of it. So he brings Sal's phone as a peace offering to be like, okay, here's some evidence if you want to go through it. So Pip and Ravi officially team up to solve the murder of Andy and prove the innocence of Sal. And when they go through his phone, they don't really find much, except the night that Andy disappeared. They did find a text message. Like, Andy had called Sal and he ignored it, but he replied to the call with a text message saying, I'm not talking to you until you've stopped. And they're like, stopped what? What was happening? Was she cheating on him? Like, what was she doing? What did he want her to stop? They also find a license plate written in his notes app, but they can't find the license plate anywhere online. And then they start going through his text messages and analyzing them, and they start to theorize that whoever sent the confession text was not Sal, because the grammar and the way that they're typing is different than all the other text messages that he has sent to his friends. And then moving on to Andy's side, Pip decides she's going to interview Emma and Chloe, who were Andy's best friends from high school. So first she starts with Emma. So Emma tells Pip that Thursday and Friday leading up to the disappearance that Emma saw Andy and Sal arguing in the hallway at school. She also told her that Andy wasn't supposed to leave her house on Friday night because she was babysitting her little sister Becca. Emma also gave insight into what Andy's personality was like. She said she could make you feel super special, like you were the only one in the room, but then she could also use your insecurities to tear you down. And this is when my alarm bells went ringing, and I'm like, oh, so she's Allison De Laurenta. So like, if you like Pretty Little Liars, you'll like this story because Andy, Allison, they are the same person. After she interviews Emma, she interviews Chloe, Andy's other best friend. Chloe is a lot more defensive about Andy than Emma was, and Chloe starts to tell Pip that Andy always had this cash around, she always had designer stuff, and she's always trying to spend money. And anytime Chloe would ask her where she got the money from, Andy would always be really secretive about it and never give her a straight up answer. Through Pip's questioning, Chloe becomes very defensive of Andy and she quickly ends the interview. And Pip's like, shoot, I didn't get enough information. So she goes back to Emma. But instead of going to Emma as Pip, she uses an app to generate a fake phone number and texts Emma saying like, hey, this is Chloe. Do you remember me? Like, we were friends. Like, no, she didn't say, do you remember me? Like, obviously they remember each other. But she's like, hey, this is Chloe. I got a new number. I just wanted you to have it. Like, oh my God, like this girl is calling and asking me about Andy. And then so through that, she starts to dig for more information and learns that Andy had a secret mystery man who they referred to as secret older guy leading up to her disappearance. And not only did Andy have the secret of a secret mystery guy, she also knew a secret about her father, and that was that her father was cheating on her mother, and she knew about it. Taking a break from the investigation, Pip decides to go camping with Kara, Aunt, Zach, and Lauren. That's her little primary friend group. And while they're camping, Pip notices someone watching them in the forest, and she freaks out and tells her friends, and they all go running after him. So as they're running after the mystery stalker, whoever, then they come back to the campsite. Pip finds a note in her sleeping bag that basically tells her to stop investigating this murder. And Pip blames the boys. She's like, did you guys leave this note? Like, this isn't funny. And they were like, no, we didn't leave any note in there. So Pip decides that the note in her sleeping bag must have been a practical joke, and she basically ignores it, but then she also doesn't really tell anybody about the note either. Besides confronting the boys and asking if they left it, she doesn't tell anybody about it, and she just ignores it and keeps going on her way and keeps investigating the murder. Then Pip decides she's going to go back to Emma and have a follow-up interview, and basically during the interview, she uses the information that she previously learned about the secret mystery man and asks Emma straight up, she's like, why didn't you tell the police about the secret mystery man that Andy was seeing? And Emma basically says, well, we didn't tell the police because we didn't think it was relevant, and also we never met him, so we didn't even know if he was a real person or not. And then Pip asks Emma about Andy's relationship with Naomi, saying like, did they have any issues? And Emma replies, that's not the word she had issues with. She had no issues with Naomi, but she did have issues with Naomi's father, Elliot, Mr. Ward, the teacher, and that leading up to a week before her murder, that she had said that she hated Mr. Ward and called him an asshole. And this like raises alarm bells from Pip, because Elliot told her that he had no relationship with Andy. So she's like, wait, he said that he had nothing to do with her the 2 years leading up to her disappearance, but now I'm finding out she called him an asshole a week before the disappearance. Like, why would he lie about that? What actually was their relationship? And then she's like, wait, was he secret older guy? But then she's like, oh no, that can't be true. So Pip confronts Elliot directly, and she's like, hey, apparently she hated you right before she died. Why would she hate you if you said he had no relationship with her? And he said because he was a teacher that he found out that Andy was cyberbullying someone, and she had posted this video that was just like cyberbullying, and that was grounds for expulsion. But instead of telling the principal about it and getting her expelled because she was going to college and he didn't want to ruin her future, he decided to reach out to her dad directly and said, hey, she needs to delete the video or else I'm going to take it to the higher ups and she's probably going to get expelled for it. So that's what happened leading up to her disappearing, which is why she didn't like him. So then Pip does a follow-up interview with Naomi and finds out that Andy was cyberbullying a girl named Natalie, not just cyberbullying, but all around bullying her. And what Andy did was she was catfishing Natalie and decided to pose as a boy named Chris and got Natalie to send a topless photo of herself or a topless video of herself. And then when Natalie sent it to who she thought was Chris and was actually Andy, Andy posted it all over the internet and just blasted it online. So everyone was kind of making fun of Natalie. And it's kind of like, what are you doing? That's not even cyberbullying. That's committing a felony. And so when Elliot finds out about this video, he's like, I just went to Jason because like I didn't want her to like get in trouble. Bro, she's committing felony charges over here, posting like videos of minors. Maybe you shouldn't have just gone to the principal, but maybe you should have gone to the police as well. So Andy was bullying a girl named Natalie, and that's not the only thing she did to Natalie. Natalie also got the role in the play that Andy wanted. So she went to Natalie and blackmailed her and said, hey, your brother Daniel, well, I slept with him when I was 15 and I'm going to tell everybody he R-worded me if you don't drop out of the play. And Nat was like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna drop out of the play. So Pip then decides she's going to go to Natalie's house and confront her and ask her about what happened with Andy. And when she gets there, she actually is on house arrest because she has a violent criminal history. And Natalie basically tells her that she was the one who left the death threat in Andy's locker, which raises alarm bells for Pip. And it also helps clear Sal's name because the police originally thought Sal left the death note, but actually it was Natalie who left the death note. We also find out that her brother Daniel became a police officer, and he became a police officer right before Andy disappeared. So she decides that Natalie and Daniel are both now on her persons of interest list. Then when Pip goes home, she gets some good news. Because of the Freedom of Information Act, she was able to get access to Sal's interview with the police from Saturday morning right after Andy disappeared. And in the interview with police, he basically tells police that yes, him and Andy did argue, but he wouldn't admit to what they were arguing about. And Pip got the vibe from the interview that Sal was coming off very evasive, and it made him look really guilty. Later, Pip sees Becca, Andy's sister, in a cafe and approaches her, and she wants to interview her, but she doesn't really want to push any buttons. So she starts kind of asking her questions, and the only information she's really able to get out of Becca is that their parents didn't give her and Andy an allowance. So that still leaves the question of where Andy got all her cash and her money from. She also finds out that Becca is currently dating a guy named Stanley Forbes, which is the guy that Pip interviewed earlier, the first interview she did in the book, that said Sal was unquestionably guilty. Well, that same person Becca is now dating. Next, Pip interviews Jess Walker, who is Becca's ex-best friend. Jess tells Pip that one night they decided to follow Andy to one of the calamity parties, and while they were there, Becca ditched Jess to go hook up with some guy. And while that was happening, Jess saw Andy canoodling with Max, and she said they looked very friendly, which is weird because Max said Andy was nothing but an acquaintance, but yet here Jess is seeing them be overly friendly at a party together, and Sal was nowhere in sight. So there is a connection between Andy and Max. So Pip decides to go to Max's house and confront him. And she goes to his room and she basically tells him, hey, I have conflicting information. You called Andy nothing more than an acquaintance, but I have sources that are telling me that they saw you guys very friendly at a party together. And then Max is denying it, but then they get into like a little scuffle. Pip runs up to his board and she's shuffling through his papers and she finds a scandalous topless photo of Andy in Max's bedroom. And Max is like, no, this isn't what it looks like. Like, she didn't give that to me. Me and Andy had no relationship together. I found this photo in the back of a classroom. He also says the reason he was talking to her at the party wasn't what she thinks. It wasn't because they were being friendly and hooking up. It's because he was buying drugs from her. And this makes so much sense to Pip because this would explain all the cash that Andy had. She didn't get an allowance, so it didn't come from her parents. So who did it come from? It came from selling drugs. So Pip decides to ask her friend Aunt to get them into one of the Calamity parties because she wants to go undercover and find the supplier who was selling drugs to Andy for her to sell to high schoolers. And while she's there, she gets the name and number of a supplier named Howie Bowers. So Pip decides to conduct a stakeout of where Howie does his drug dealing, and an interesting person shows up. Stanley Forbes shows up to see Howie Bowers. And she's not really sure what's going on with that or what the connection is there, only that the guy who said Sal is undoubtedly guilty is hanging out with Andy's alleged supplier. She also sees a boy named Robin, who's one of Aunt's soccer teammates, buy drugs from Howie as well, although we're not writing on the board because it's not relevant, at least not in this story, but maybe it'll be relevant in the next couple books, because why would she make a point to tell us that and then not make it relevant in this story? It has to be relevant in one of the upcoming books. So when Howie leaves, Pip decides to follow him, and she follows him to his house on Monroe Street. And the reason why Monroe Street is notable is because that is where Andy's car was found abandoned the night of her disappearance. While she's looking at his house, she notices Howie's car. Howie's car and his license plate is the same license plate number that Sal had written down in his notes app. Now they're theorizing that Sal found out about Andy's drug dealing, and that's why he texted her, I'm not talking to you until you've stopped. Stop drug dealing. That's also why he was being evasive with the police about what him and Andy were arguing about and not wanting to tell them. Because at this point, when they interviewed Sal Saturday morning, he didn't know that Andy was dead yet. So he thought that he was protecting Andy, that Andy must have gone off on some drug thing and that she would be back, and he didn't want to get her in trouble, so he didn't want to tell the cops about her drug dealing. And that's obviously what they were arguing about, hence why he couldn't tell them about their argument. So that is when everything is starting to come together. So then Pip decides to go to Howie's house to confront him. I swear, the amount of dangerous situations and the amount of confrontations this girl puts herself in is unreal. So Pip decides to go to Howie's house to confront him, and he admits to being Andy's supplier, and he also admits to giving her advice to use codes and to have a second phone, which he did give her a burner phone, and also have a place to hide her drugs. And he tells that Pip and Ravi that Andy used to hide her drugs and her extra phone in a loose floorboard in her bedroom. So now Pip wants to go investigate her bedroom and find that loose floorboard and see if they can find any clues in there. So Pip and Ravi decide to break into the Bell's house while nobody's home and go in Andy's room. They go to her floorboard where Howie said that it would be, and they do find the loose floorboard with a hiding place, but there's nothing inside it. Someone got to it first. But while they're there, Pip decides to open Andy's planner and starts taking photos, and then they're going to go back home and analyze it and see what Andy was really up to. So in her planner, they find 3 abbreviations that really stand out to them, which we're going to write down because I have things to say. There's HH, which they assume stands for Howie's house. There's IV, which they don't know what stands for yet, and then TS, which stands for the train station, which is the gas station that Howie does his drug dealing at. So what they think is that HH means Howie's house. That HH means that she's going to Howie's house to buy drugs. That TS means she's going to meet him at the gas station to buy drugs. And then through research, they figure out that IV stands for Ivy House Inn, which is a bed and breakfast. And the reason they figured this out is they're going on the Ivy House's Yelp reviews and they're looking at the photos. And then they look at the bathroom. And the photo of the bathroom is the background of the photo that Max has of Andy in his room. So Andy has a picture of herself. She's in this bathroom. Then they see on the Ivy House bathrooms are the same bathroom that Andy took the photo in, meaning that Andy has been to the Ivy House. Does that make sense? I feel like it sounded a little bit confusing, but like that makes sense, right? Okay, so they conclude that Ivy stands for Ivy House, and that is their next stop, going to the Ivy House. So Pip and Ravi go to the Ivy House and talk to the old lady that runs the place, and Pip is asking her about records they had 5 years ago, and she's like, no, we don't really have those records. So she decides to show her a picture of Andy, and she's like, oh, I recognize that girl. And then she was like, okay, she was here 5 years ago. She's like, no, I recognize her, like she was here a couple weeks ago. And Pip is like, that's not possible, this girl was murdered. But then her grandson interrupts and is like, I'm sorry, like, or she's mentally not doing well right now, like, you know, she has like dementia or Alzheimer's or something. And his name is Henry Hill. H. You know, that's not relevant in this book. We never hear from Henry Hill again, but like it's just a little suspicious that they think H stands for Howie's house, but then like the next chapter we're introduced to a character called Henry Hill. Just a little interesting to me. So yeah, we have Henry Hill, or this could be Henry Hill, or it could be Howie's house. I don't really know. I guess I'll see in the next book or the book after that. But yeah, now these abbreviations are kind of like useless. We don't need them anymore, but like that's what I wanted to point out to you. So as Pip and Ravi are leaving the Ivy House, they see Max and Howie arguing with each other, which is weird because Max told Pip that he had no idea where Andy was getting her drugs from. He had no idea who her suppliers, but there they are arguing together. So obviously they have some sort of connection. And because Max keeps lying to her and he has the photo of Andy in the Ivy House, she makes Max her #1 person of interest. Pip also learns about the types of drugs Andy was selling. She wasn't just selling weed, she was also selling rohypnol, which is a roofie. So we're just going to call them roofies because I don't even know if I pronounce rohypnol right. So we're going to call them roofies. Andy was selling roofies at calamity parties, and Pip wants to investigate why she was selling roofies, who she was selling them to, and if there was any girls that came forward saying they had been roofied at calamity parties. So Pip decides to reach out to Emma and Chloe, and they said they have never heard of anybody getting roofied at one of those parties. And Pip decides she's going to go undercover, online undercover as a CNN reporter. Well, she's basically pretending to be a CNN reporter, and she's emailing all these people that were tagged in calamity party photos and emailing them and asking them, hey, have you ever heard of people getting roofied at the parties? And while they're there, they heard, and through that, she found out that Nat got roofied at a calamity party, and then someone else said her friend had been roofied at a calamity party, but we don't know that friend's name. So earlier in the book, I didn't mention it, but we find out that Max has a secret Facebook page by the name of Nancy. Kind of like a Finsta, he has a fake Facebook page for all his friends to post, and where he posts like his real photos. So we're gonna put Max, and then we'll put in parentheses Nancy. So Pip asked Kara to get access to Naomi's Facebook so Pip can see Max's real Facebook page under the name of Nancy. Max and Naomi, I was like getting confused by my own board. So Pip looks at the pictures that all 4 of them posted the night that Andy disappeared, and Sal is in none of the photos. But she notices something more interesting than that, the time and date that Max posted the photos. So Max posted the photos Monday night between like around 10 p.m. And she thinks that's weird because Naomi, Millie, and Jake all posted pictures from the night they were hanging out all at Monday around 10 p.m. And Pip is thinking, okay, in the midst of Sal's girlfriend going missing, in the midst of a police investigation, why did they all post these photos at the same exact time on Monday? So she thinks that is a little suspicious, but then she starts really analyzing the photos. And there's one of Jake, Millie, Naomi, and Max, and Naomi's phone is present in the photo, and she zooms in on Naomi's lock screen, and the time says 12:10 a.m. And Pip's thinking, okay, so it was 12:10 a.m. when that photo was taken, because that's what her phone says. But all 4 of them are in the picture, so who was taking the picture? Well, the only logical conclusion is Sal, because he was the one hanging out with them that night, and he told police that he left the house at 12:15 a.m. And so Pip realizes that all 4 of them lied about Sal leaving at 10:30 p.m. And Sal was actually not lying to police when he told them that he left at 12:15 a.m. He actually did leave at 12:15 a.m. So Sal's dad said that he arrived back home at 12:50 a.m. So Pip and Ravi decide that they are going to kind of recreate the events of the night that Andy disappeared to see if Sal, leaving at 12:15 a.m., had enough time to murder Andy and get home at 12:50 a.m. And through their little investigation, they conclude that Sal could not have possibly committed the murder because he was walking home as he said he did. He would not have enough time to murder Andy, hide her body, and do everything with the car on Monroe Street and get to his house at 12:50 a.m. And so Pip decides that she is going to go to Naomi's house, and Max happens to be there, and she is going to confront them about them lying about Sal's alibi. And she learns that January 2013, all four of them, Naomi, Millie, Jake, and Max, went to a party, a New Year's party, and got really drunk. Sal was not there. They got really drunk at the party, and Max decided he was going to drive them home. And when he drove home, he actually hit somebody who was standing on the side of the road, and they thought that the guy was dead, and they decided, okay, we gotta go because like we can't get in trouble. Well, it turns out the guy wasn't really dead. But he is seriously injured, and they never came clean about the accident. It was just known as a hit and run, and nobody knew who was driving the car. So fast forward to right before Sal's murder. Somebody messaged all four of them and said, hey, you need to delete all the photos that you have with Sal that night, and you need to post the photos of just you four together. And also you need to tell police that he left your house at 10:30 p.m. And if you don't do that, I'm going to tell people you guys are the ones who did that hit and run in January 2013. And they were like, oh my God. Okay. So then Naomi says we had to lie, not only to save ourselves, but because she knows Sal didn't actually do it. So she's like, okay, even if we lie about his alibi, like they're going to find the real killer anyway. So she was justifying it in her head. And so yeah, they come clean to Pip. So Pip takes Naomi off her person of interest list because she realizes why Naomi has been so sketch like the whole time. So she has 5 suspects. So she has Nat, Daniel, Hallie, Max, and Jason. So one day when Pip goes home, she realizes that her room has been broken into, and there is a note on her computer saying, you need to stop this, Pippa. So she's received another note, but she's just like, okay, whatever. I'm still gonna do my thing. I'm still ignoring it. Who cares? Then Pip goes to school and she gets another note in her locker that says, you need to walk away from this, Pippa. And again, she's just like, she's a little freaked out, but she's like, okay, like whatever. I'm still gonna do my thing. Like, I'm just getting notes. Like, whatever. I still got to investigate. Because I'm getting notes must mean I'm getting closer to the truth. Next, Pip talks to Becca again, and she tells Pip that Jason actually had a relationship with Daniel, and Jason is the one who convinced Daniel to become a police officer. So we will connect them together. He also tells Pip that when Jason realized Andy was missing, Daniel was the cop that he called. Daniel was the first to report on scene, and Daniel was the first to search the house along with his partner. So Daniel had first access to Andy's room, so Pip is thinking that he might be the one who cleared out her floorboard, or he could have removed any evidence that would have pointed to him because he was first on scene. So then one night, Pip decides she's going to take her dog out, and she lets her dog off leash, which, girl, why are you letting your dog off leash? Your dog's perfectly fine on the leash, okay? If you want to let your dog off leash, go to a dog park. Why are we letting our dog off leash in the forest? I don't understand. And this is one thing that made me like super mad. Okay, so Pip lets her dog off leash at night in a forest, and then her dog doesn't come back to her. And she gets a text saying, you want to see your dog again, ? And then later she gets a text saying to bring all of her laptop and all information she's gathered about the case into the forest and destroy it, and she will see her dog again. So Pip follows directions. She brings her stuff in the forest. She destroys it. And then the anonymous person says, okay, you will see your dog again. And then later that day, her dad comes in her room all solemn and tells her like, hey, we did find your dog, but he's drowned in a lake. He's dead. And then Pip is just utterly destroyed over this because she feels like it's her fault, and no one really understands the guilt that she's feeling because she hasn't been telling people about all the blackmail that she's been receiving. So they think she's feeling guilty because she let the dog off leash, but no, she's feeling guilty because she was being blackmailed and she didn't say anything and she didn't listen, and now her dog is dead, so she feels like it's her fault. Ravi comes over and Pip tells Ravi, hey, I am done with the investigation. Like, I'm sorry, I should have never started this. And Ravi's like, no, we've come so close. And Pip's like, I just have to break his heart. Like, I just have to do it. Like, I'm done with this. And then Ravi really quickly figures out that Pip is bluffing about wanting to end the investigation, and that he figures out that she was actually being blackmailed. He's like, no, you would never just end this investigation. Something must have happened. And then he pieces it together. He's like, wait, your dog just died. Wait, your dog drowned in a lake. Wait, are you being blackmailed? And then Pip comes clean and tells Ravi about all the blackmail that she's been receiving. And he was like, okay, like, we can do this. Like, we'll just have to start over from scratch again. And she was like, wait, no, we don't. She's like, I'm not no amateur. I'm not no rookie. I didn't destroy all my evidence. I email everything to myself. So while you think she destroyed everything for a brief moment, Pip is smart. She did not destroy everything, and they resume their investigation. So after Barney's death, who is Pip's dog, Naomi calls Pip and she's like, hey, I heard about Barney. I am so sorry about this. And Pip is like, wait, Naomi, I don't recognize your phone number. Like, she's like, oh yeah, mine got broken. So this is like an old SIM card I'm using, and that's why I'm calling you from. So then Pip looks at the number Naomi's calling her from and she recognizes the phone number. She realizes that this is the phone number that Andy had wrote down in her planner and then scratched out. The phone number that Pip could never really figure out what the numbers were because she had scratched it out and she was trying all these combinations and nothing was working. Well, Naomi is calling her from the number. So she just figured out that Naomi has some connection to this phone number, and that puts Naomi back on her suspect list. So Pip decides she's going to go back to Naomi's house because previously in the beginning of the book, after Pip received her first letter of blackmail, she went on Naomi's and their family's computer and selected a setting basically saying save all printed documents. So that way, if Naomi was the one sending her death threats, that she would know that it was coming from Naomi. So Pip goes to her house to investigate the printer thing. And before she does that, she's talking to them and she's just trying to make conversation about the SIM card. And she's like, oh, you're lucky you had your old SIM card. And she was like, no, this isn't mine. And then Kara speaks up and Kara's like, oh yeah, I found that in the bottom of Dad's desk drawer. So I just gave it to Naomi to use. So then we learn the SIM card didn't come from Naomi's old SIM card. It was Elliot's old SIM card. So Andy had the phone number of one of Elliot's old phones written down in her planner, although he said they had no relationship. Sir, why are you so dumb? So then Pip excuses herself to go use the restroom, and then she really just goes and investigates on their computer and realizes that all of the death threats notes were printed from the Ward's printer, but they weren't printed by Naomi, they weren't printed by Kara, they were printed by Elliot. The guy she thinks is her second father, her best friend's father, is the one sending her death threats, and she also thinks he's the one who killed her dog. So now Pip starts analyzing Elliot's life just in general. So he is a teacher, and he also tutors Monday, Wednesday, Fridays after school. But when their mom died, she left them a good amount of money. So Pip is confused. She's like, why is he tutoring? He doesn't need the money. There's no reason for him to be tutoring. So she starts to theorize that he is going to visit Andy's grave 3 nights a week. And Robbie's like, no, that's ridiculous. He wouldn't go visit her grave 3 times a week. Like, that's excessive. So then Pip's like, you're right. That is a bit excessive to go 3 nights a week. Oh, so he must be keeping her alive somewhere and he's going to visit her. So she thinks that Elliot is keeping Andy captive somewhere because, again, Andy's body was never found, and that he's visiting her Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's why he never misses a tutoring session. So Pip and Robbie devise a plan that Pip is going to share her location with Robbie, and then she's going to catch a ride home with Kara and her dad and accidentally leave her phone in their car so she can see where Elliot goes when he's tutoring. So Pip decides she's going to go take a ride with them home, and she feels safe because Kara's in the car and like Elliot's like her second dad, so and he's not suspicious of her yet, or she doesn't think that he doesn't know that she's suspicious of him yet. So she basically just like is making conversation with him. She's like, oh, where are you going to tutor today? And he's like, oh, I'm going to Stanford. And she's like, okay, cool. And then when she gets dropped off, Robbie comes over and they're watching her phone's location. And he's not going to Stanford. He was going to New Canaan. And New Canaan is where the Wards used to live before their mom passed away. So their old house is in New Canaan. So Pip gets suspicious and she's like, wait, does he still have his old house? And is that where he's keeping Andy captive? And then we get to chapter 44. Chapter 44 is a doozy of a chapter. Okay, we learn so much information. So Pip concludes that Elliot must be keeping Andy alive in their old house and that he never sold it. Even though his daughters do think he has sold the house, he actually didn't sell it. So Pip is like, okay, I'm gonna call the police, tell them everything I know, and then I'm gonna go confront Elliot. So Pip is outside his house in New Canaan and she calls the cops and says, hey, Elliot's a murderer and he's keeping this girl captive in his house and I'm going in there. And the 911 operator is like, no, don't go in there. She's like, I have to. And then she hangs up and runs in the house. Pip goes and confronts Elliot and he tells her everything. He tells her that leading up to Andy's disappearance, that Andy and him had a relationship together and that they had slept together at the Ivy House Inn, and that Elliot wanted to break it off with Andy because he started to feel wrong about it, but Andy was like, no, we're not breaking it off, and if you do try to break it off, I'm going to blackmail you because I'm a minor and this is illegal and I can get you in trouble. So then, actually, was she a minor or was she 18? I think she was underage, or maybe she was 18. I don't remember. Okay, she was either 17 or 18. And basically she's like, I can get you fired. I can get you thrown in jail. Like, don't mess with me. So he finds out that she was cyberbullying Nat with a topless photo on the internet. So he's like, perfect, we have mutual self-destruction, we have mutual blackmail. So that's why he tells Jason that Andy was posting this video of the girl so that she couldn't rat him out, because then he would rat her out and they would go down together. So then that's why she was like, oh, I hate you. So then the night that she disappeared, she went over to Elliot's house and they were arguing, and then she becomes irate and she starts destroying Elliot's late wife's paintings. And so then he gets really mad and he ends up shoving her, and then she falls back and hits her head on his desk and she's bleeding, and so he starts freaking out. So he runs to the other part of the house to get a first aid kit. And when he gets the first aid kit and comes back, she's completely gone. Like, she ran out of the house, she's gone. And he's like, okay, like, I don't know what to do. And then the next day, she is considered missing by police. So he thinks that she must have like died in a ditch somewhere and that her body is going to be discovered any moment now. So he was like, oh shoot, I need to frame someone for this murder, so when they find her body that I'm like not being investigated. So then he decides to set up Sal, who he has a relationship with. So on Tuesday, he goes to Sal's house and he gives him sleeping pills, and he was like, hey, these are going to help with your headache. So he gives him some, Sal takes them, and then he's like, hey, you know what? Let's go look in the forest for Andy. So he takes Sal to the forest to look for Andy and force feeds him more sleeping pills and puts a plastic bag around his head, and then, you know, murders him. And then he takes Sal's phone and sends a text to Sal's dad from Sal's phone, basically the confession text. Again, they theorize in the beginning of the book was written by somebody else. Yes, it was written by Elliot. And then Elliot said he was driving down the road one day where he found Andy on the side of the road. And this girl, and that Andy had turned into like a drug addict and she wasn't doing well, and she said she wanted to come back to her old life. So then Elliot was like, oh shoot, like no one can know this girl's alive because everyone thinks Sal murdered her. So if she comes back alive, people are going to know Sal didn't murder her, and then people are going to start investigating again. So he decides he's going to take Andy and put her in the attic of his old house that was up for sale at the time. He took the house off the market, made Andy a room in his attic, and kept her locked up there. And he went there Monday, Wednesday, Friday to just like feed her, let her take showers, and just like give her company. And that's what happened. And then as that's happening, Pip is like, I can't believe you did this and you killed Barney. And then Elliot's like, I didn't kill Barney. And then she cuts him off and she runs upstairs to the attic because that's when the cops show up. She opens the door and then she's like, wait, this girl's not Andy. The girl says, hi, I'm Andy. But she's like, wait, no. This girl is not Andy. So the girl that he's been holding captive and calling Andy, the girl that said, hi, I'm Andy, is not Bell. So Andy Bell is still unaccounted for. So in the aftermath of all this, Pip decides to go over all the evidence again, and she realizes that she had 2 blackmailers and there might be 2 murderers. So Elliot was blackmailing her and he always left her notes, and he always called her Pippa in the notes, and he is the one who murdered Sal. But then she realizes the other blackmail she got about Barney all came via text message, and they always called her derogatory names. And she was like, wait, that's like, those are, it's just like, there has to be 2 different people, because he was calling me Pippa in a note, so then why would he call me a bitch in a text message? So she decides that there is 2 blackmailers, so she has to go reinvestigate the case on Andy's side, because now she's figured out that Elliot killed Sal, Elliot was her blackmailer. Now we're figuring out who is blackmailing her over her Andy investigation. And so she decides she's going to call Max, and she's like, hey, look, you have nothing to lose anymore. I know everything. I know you were buying roofies from Andy at the party, so you need to tell me who you used them on. Did you roofie an R word, Becca, Andy's sister? And Max is like, yes, I did do that. Although he's like, it wasn't R word. And she was like, no, that is definitely R word. You roofied her and then you had sex with her unconscious. Like, I don't know what else you call that. So, Pip decides that she is going to go confront Becca about what happened. So she goes to visit Becca at her house, and Becca makes them tea, and then they start drinking it, and Becca tells her basically what happened the night that Andy disappeared. Becca tells her that when she was really upset over what happened at the Calamity party between her and Max, and she decided to investigate where Max bought the roofies from, and it led her back to her sister Andy. And she was like, oh my god, like, Andy is the one who sold him the drugs that he used to drug me and then R-word me. She's like, my sister's gonna be on my side, we're gonna get him back, like, she's gonna be there for me. So then the night that after Andy hits her head at Elliot's house, she comes back home. Becca didn't know that she was bleeding in the back of her head. She just like tells Andy what happened at the party, and Andy's just super mean to her, and she was like, you should just be lucky somebody wanted to have sex with you, like blah blah blah. And then Becca's like really upset about it, and Andy tells her, she's like, you can't tell anybody about what happened to you. She's like, because then it's gonna lead back to me and I'm gonna get into trouble, so I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to keep this a secret. So then Becca gets really mad, and then they get into a fight, and then Andy starts choking on her own bodily fluids. And so while she's choking, Becca just sits and stares at her and doesn't help her, doesn't call for help, and basically watches her choke herself to death and die. So then Becca's like, oh my God, I'm gonna get in trouble because Andy's now dead. I'm the only person with her. Nobody knows what happened. I didn't try to get help for her. So she's like, okay, I have to dispose of Andy's body. So she puts Andy's body in the trunk of her car, and that's why there was blood on the trunk of her car, because the back of her head was bleeding. And she takes Andy to a abandoned house and stuffs her body in a septic tank. And then Pip starts to feel funny, and she realizes that Becca drugged the tea that Pip was drinking, which, first of all, Pip, you're going to investigate like a murder, like, and you think this person is a murder suspect, and then you accept tea from them? What are you doing? And Becca tries to kill Pip because she's like, you know too much. And Pip is having us struggling to fight back because she's drugged. And then Becca is choking Pip. And then who shows up and saves the day? Ravi and Pip's dad come, and they get Becca off of her. Because remember when they shared locations for the plan with Elliot? Well, Ravi still had Pip's location, and he was like, wait, where is she? He looks at her location, realized that she's at Becca's house. He knew something was wrong, so he grabbed her dad. They went to Becca's house, found Becca choking her, and then they pulled Becca off, and then Pip is okay. And then we fast forward 2 months later, and Pip is ready to give her senior capstone project presentation, and it has made national news. And you know how Pip was pretending to be a CNN reporter? Well, no, CNN was actually there to look at her project while she presented it, and she basically told everyone her story of what happened, and that is the end of the book. So yeah, I'm absolutely obsessed with this book. It was so bingeable. It was so good. Like, there's just so much going on. Like, how could you not like it? And I am super excited for book number 2 because there are so many, I feel like, connections here that we didn't get to necessarily explore. Like, why was Stanley visiting Howie? Why was Max visiting Howie? Anne's friend Robin also visiting Howie. Howie has to play a big role in our next one. And then also, why was Jason trying to convince Daniel to become a police officer? Suspicious. So there's a lot going on. And then also, Jake and Millie played such minimal roles in this book. Maybe they'll be expanded into the next book. And yeah, I'm just very, very excited. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like my breakdown of this plot, if you'd like me to do more, if you'd like me to do the rest of the series, or if there's any other series you want to see me do plot breakdowns of. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!